My family opened credit cards in my name and bought a 65-inch TV for my uncle's man cave. When I confronted them, they just laughed and said, "Family helping family." Today, said family is begging me to stop what I'm doing and forgive them. Before my mom died, she taught me two things: how to bake, and to never let anyone crush my spirit. After she passed, I was forced to move in with my dad and his family, where I became the de facto babysitter, who got blamed for everything. I remember I was 14 when my cousin spilled grape juice all over the carpet. He was 6, and I'd only left him alone for a minute to go bathroom. But when I came out, my aunt was already yelling at me like I was the one who'd poured it. Moments like that weren't rare, they were just routine. I was the eldest cousin, the eldest grandkid, the unofficial babysitter/scapegoat for a family packed tighter than a jar of pickles. If the baby cried, it was my fault. If someone scraped a knee, my fault. If the microwave caught fire because someone put foil in it again, somehow still my fault. But I just bit my tongue and took it. Because we were a family of 10 plus all crammed into one house, and because the rule there was family was everything, I believed I was doing the right thing. But what annoyed me was that what I did for them was never reciprocated. I was the default, the one they turned to when they needed something, the one they forgot when it came time to give. I didn't have a voice, but I had baking. I used to sneak into the kitchen when the house was finally quiet, usually after midnight, when everyone had passed out from yelling or watching TV too loud. I'd tiptoe across the floor, open the cupboards like they might bite, and mix flour and sugar with shaking hands, praying no one would wake up. I watched baking tutorials on YouTube like they were sermons, scribbling notes in a little notebook I hid under my mattress, and for the first time, I felt in control. Measuring, mixing, timing, it was all about order, about things turning out the way they were supposed to. Unlike everything else in my life, when I started getting good, the same family who mocked me started devouring everything I made. My uncle once called me a cupcake fairy, while shoving 3 snickerdoodles in his mouth, spraying crumbs as he laughed at his own joke. I smiled, swallowed it. That's what I always did. I remember the night I told them I got into the night program at the community college. I was glowing, thinking maybe they'd be proud. Instead, they laughed. "You're a grown man who wants to make cookies? Gonna open a little pink bakery next to the nail salon? Don't quit babysitting. Cookies won't pay rent." I forced myself to smile through it, but I still went. I juggled school, work, and watching the kids. I stayed up late studying lamination techniques, then woke up early to get my cousins ready for school. And somehow, I graduated. The bakery I work at now is small, cozy, and I'm appreciated. My manager calls me her secret weapon. Last week my aunt called me selfish. "You think you're too good for this family now? Just 'cause you bake a few cakes? You abandoned us." She said it like I'd walked away from royalty. Then they threw my stuff on the front lawn. Every t-shirt, every book, even the framed photo of my mom I kept on the dresser. It cracked on the pavement. "Take your pansy-ass cupcakes and go." I stood barefoot, frozen, watching my old shirts get trampled by toddlers who were already arguing about who'd get my bed. My uncle tossed my stand mixer, my prized mixer, into a garbage bag like it was trash. No one looked sorry as I walked away. I called Jamie. They were in my bakery program. Smart, calm, quiet. They answered on the first ring. "I got you," they said. "Come over." Their apartment was warm, safe. They handed me a mug of chai and a spare key. I collapsed on the couch and just breathed. I told them everything. The juice on the carpet. The wedding where I cooked for 20 and still got yelled at for not helping. The Christmas where I made pecan pie and got told I ruined it by not making pumpkin. Jamie just listened. No interruptions. No judgment. Then they said, "I got kicked out at 16 for being gay." Said I embarrassed the family. "You think they ever called me since?" We sat in silence for a while. I looked down at my tea. "I want to do something," I said. "I want them to feel what it's like. Just once." Jamie smirked. "So what are we baking?" That weekend, I made a cake. Gorgeous. Layers of chocolate mousse, raspberry jam, a thin coat of ganache, topped with gold-dusted berries. Left it on their porch in a pink box with a ribbon. No note. The next weekend, I did it again and again. Soon, I became their mystery baker. They posted about it on Facebook. "Our guardian angel strikes again. Someone loves us." On week 5, I baked a rum cake and loaded it with laxatives, enough to humble an army. Dropped it off, then went back to Jamie's and watched a movie. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. "Whoever sent that cake, F you. You ruined our house." Apparently, the plumbing failed. 2 bathrooms, 11 people, 1 cake. Jamie and I laughed until we wheezed. I think my mom would be proud of me. A few years later, I finally got to live out my dream, only my family wasn't done with me yet. Our bakery was everything I dreamed about during those midnight baking sessions. The walls were painted a soft cream color that seemed to glow in the morning sunlight. We had wooden tables and chairs that Jamie had refinished themselves. The display case was always filled with colorful pastries. The first sign came 3 weeks after our grand opening, when a health inspector showed up unannounced, clipboard in hand, and suspicion in his eyes. "Received an anonymous tip," he said, flipping through his papers with meticulous slowness. "Complaints about unsanitary conditions, possible food contamination." Jamie and I exchanged knowing glances across our immaculate kitchen. We kept this place spotless. It was practically a religion to us. "We're happy to show you around," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the knot forming in my stomach. The inspector was thorough, checking every corner, every refrigerator temperature, every expiration date with the intensity of someone hoping to find fault. After 2 hours, he couldn't find a single violation. "Everything looks good," he admitted. seeming almost disappointed as he tucked his pen behind his ear. But I'll have to come back. Multiple complaints. After he left, Jamie slumped against the stainless steel counter. That was your family, wasn't it? I nodded, the knot in my stomach tightening. First the identity theft, now this. They're escalating. My father and uncle had opened credit cards in my name while I was still living with them. A parting gift I discovered only when collection agencies started calling. Officer Martinez had helped me file the police report, but my family had gotten off with minimal consequences, claiming they thought I'd approved it as family helping family. The collection calls had started coming in during my first week at Sophia's bakery. I remember standing in the alley behind the shop during my break, phone pressed to my ear, listening in growing horror as the agent detailed purchases I'd never made. A 65-inch TV, a gaming system, furniture for Uncle Derek's man cave. The crushing weight of debt that wasn't mine settled on my shoulders, making it hard to breathe in the narrow alley with its smell of garbage and bread yeast. When I confronted my family, they acted offended that I would even question them, as if taking out credit in my name was their right as family. My cousin Zoe confirmed my suspicions the next day when she came by the bakery. Unlike the rest of the family, Zoe had always been kind to me, sneaking into the kitchen during my midnight baking sessions, watching with wide eyes as I created something from nothing. Now 18, she'd reached out after the fallout, apologizing for not standing up for me. Aunt Patty was bragging about getting your little cupcake shop shut down, she said, while washing dishes in our back sink, her voice low. Said she knows someone who knows someone at the health department. Zoe looked different now. She'd dyed her hair purple and had a small nose ring that caught the light when she turned her head, but her eyes were the same, wide and honest, always watching everything. Her hands moved efficiently through the soapy water, stacking clean dishes with care. She'd always been the quiet observer in the family chaos, taking mental notes while everyone else shouted over each other. I tried to avoid letting it affect me, but the inspections continued, weekly, for a month. Each time, we passed with flying colors, but the disruptions were taking a toll. Customers would see the inspector and get nervous, sometimes leaving without ordering, the bell above the door tinkling their departure. We can't keep doing this, Jamie said one night as we closed up, flipping chairs onto tables. Our revenue's down 15% this month. I rubbed my temples, feeling the beginning of a migraine pulsing behind my eyes. I'll figure something out. The next day, I called Officer Martinez, who had handled the identity theft case. He listened sympathetically, but couldn't do much. Unless you have proof they're filing false reports, my hands are tied, he explained, genuine regret in his voice. But I'll make some calls, see if I can find out who's behind the inspections. Meanwhile, business was slow, but steady. We had our regulars, the morning coffee crowd, the lunch rush from nearby offices, the afternoon moms with kids in tow. Not enough to make us rich, but enough to keep the lights on and flour in the bins. I knew each of our regulars by name and order. There was Mr. Finch, an elderly man who came every morning at precisely 7:15 for a black coffee and an almond croissant, which he would eat while reading the newspaper, methodically turning each page with careful fingers. The office workers from the insurance company down the block would arrive in waves between 11:30 and 1 p.m., many of them ordering our lunch special, a savory tart and small salad. The after-school crowd brought noise and energy around 3:30, teenagers spending their allowance on cookies and hot chocolate, filling the corner tables with backpacks and laughter. Then came the reviews, one-star bombs on every platform, Yelp, Google, Facebook, dozens of them, all claiming food poisoning, finding hair in their pastries, rude service, all from accounts created within the last week, with profile pictures clearly downloaded from stock photo sites. The owner threatened me when I complained about a moldy muffin, Jamie read aloud, voice rising with each word, their fingers gripping their phones so tight I thought the screen might crack. The bathroom was covered in filth. We don't even have a public bathroom. I scrolled through the reviews, recognizing my family's handiwork even without their names. The way Aunt Patty always exaggerated. I was violently ill for days. Uncle Derek's distinctive spelling mistakes, my dad's fixation on getting what you pay for. Our rating plummeted from 4.8 stars to 2.3 overnight, like a stone dropped in a deep well. The next morning, our usual crowd was noticeably thinner. By lunchtime, we'd served half our normal customers. By closing, we were looking at our worst day since opening, the register drawer depressingly light. We need to fight back, Jamie said, determination hardening their features as they locked the front door. Respond to every review, report the fake ones, get our real customers to post positive ones. We stayed until midnight, hunched over our laptops at the corner table, crafting careful responses, flagging obvious fakes, sending emails to our loyal customers asking for support. I felt the familiar midnight energy that had sustained me through those secret baking sessions years ago, the quiet determination, the refusal to be defeated. The bakery was eerily quiet at that hour, just the hum of the refrigerators and the occasional car passing outside. The streetlight cast long shadows across our empty display cases, and the smell of the day's baking still lingered in the air. Cinnamon, butter, chocolate. Jamie's face was illuminated by their laptop screen, their brow furrowed in concentration as they methodically worked through each fake review. My eyes burned from staring at my own screen, but I kept going, fueled by a mixture of anger and determination. The next few days were a blur of damage control. Some of our regulars came through, posting glowing reviews and bringing friends. Officer Martinez came by with news. He'd confirmed through a contact that my aunt had a connection at the health department, a former high school classmate who owed her a favor. I've spoken with his supervisor, Martinez said, accepting the cappuccino I offered. The anonymous tips will be scrutinized more carefully from now on. Officer Martinez was a steady presence throughout this ordeal, mid-40s with a salt and pepper beard and calm, observant eyes that missed nothing. He'd take small sips of his coffee, making appreciative noises, while explaining the legal nuances of harassment and false reporting. His uniform was always crisp, his manner professional but kind. He'd become something of a regular himself, stopping by a couple times a week, sometimes in uniform, sometimes not. It helped, but the damage was done. We were operating at a loss, dipping into our emergency fund to make rent on both the shop and our apartment. Then Zoe came in one afternoon, breathless and excited, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "I have an idea," she said, eyes bright with the kind of enthusiasm that's contagious. "What if we do a special event? Something that would get people talking, get them to come see for themselves that this place is amazing." Jamie and I looked at each other across the display case of half-empty pastry trays. "What kind of event?" I asked, allowing myself a flicker of hope. "A baking class," Zoe exclaimed, her hands animating her words. "You could teach people how to make those midnight cookies you used to bake, the ones with the chocolate and the sea salt that everyone fought over, even when they were being mean to you." It was brilliant in its simplicity. We set up a midnight baking workshop for the following Saturday. Limited spots, reasonable price, all ingredients included. We promoted it on social media, put flyers in local coffee shops, even got a small mention in the local paper's community section. The response was overwhelming. We sold out in 2 days, added a second class, sold that out too. The night before the first class, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those nights in my family's kitchen, the fear of being caught, the joy of creating something beautiful in secret. Now I'd be sharing that with strangers, turning a painful memory into something positive, something that could save our bakery. I tossed and turned in my bed, listening to the occasional car pass by outside my window, watching the digital clock numbers change with agonizing slowness. My mind raced through all the preparations. Had I ordered enough chocolate? Were the measuring cups all clean? What if no one enjoyed themselves? What if this was all a huge mistake? The familiar pre-event anxiety knotted my stomach, but underneath it was a current of excitement I couldn't deny. The classes were a hit. People loved the story behind the cookies, loved getting their hands dusted with flour, loved the sense of community that formed around our wooden work tables. Photos appeared on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, happy faces holding freshly baked cookies, tagging midnight flour, drowning out the fake reviews with authentic joy. We scheduled more classes, flaky pies, artisanal breads, delicate French pastries. Jamie taught some, I taught others. Even Zoe led a cupcake decorating workshop for kids, showing a natural talent for teaching that matched her growing skills with buttercream. Our reputation began to recover, the stars on our reviews climbing back up like a slow-rising souffle. But my family wasn't done. One morning, I arrived to find our front window smashed, glass glittering across the floor like diamond dust. Nothing was stolen. The register was untouched, the equipment intact. This wasn't a robbery, it was a message, written in broken glass and malice. The early morning sunlight streamed through the jagged hole where our window had been, creating prisms of light across the floor and display cases. A cold breeze swept through the bakery, carrying the sounds of early morning traffic and the smell of approaching rain. I stood in the doorway, keys still in my hand, taking in the destruction. Glass everywhere, even in the pastry case, rendering everything inside unsellable. Small shards crunched under my shoes as I carefully made my way inside, my breath visible in the chilly air. The security camera footage showed 2 figures in hoodies, their faces obscured by shadows, but I recognized my cousin Randy's distinctive limp from an old football injury, the way he favored his right side when he thought no one was watching. The police were skeptical without clearer evidence, but they filed a report, another piece of paper that wouldn't protect us. The repair cost ate into our recovering finances like moths in flour. Jamie suggested we install better security cameras, an alarm system, more expenses we couldn't really afford, but couldn't afford not to have. That night, I lay awake on my bed. I'd graduated from Jamie's couch to the spare bedroom months ago, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, feeling that familiar helplessness creeping back like an old enemy. My room was small but comfortable, with a second-hand dresser I'd refinished myself, and curtains Jamie had sewn from fabric we found at a thrift store. The walls were painted a soft blue that reminded me of early morning skies. From outside came the distant sounds of the city at night, occasional car horns, the rumble of a garbage truck, someone's music playing faintly. My sheets smelled of the lavender detergent Jamie insisted on using, claiming it helped with sleep. It wasn't working tonight. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Give up the bakery or things get worse. Family protects family, but you chose strangers over blood." I showed Jamie the next morning over coffee that had gone cold while we talked. Their face hardened, jaw setting in a way I'd come to recognize as their battle stance. "This is harassment. This is criminal. We're going to the police." Officer Martinez took the text seriously, especially combined with the broken window. "We can try to trace the number," he said, making notes in his worn leather notebook, "and I'll increase patrols in your area." But we all knew it wouldn't be enough. My family was careful, methodical in their cruelty. They'd find ways around whatever protections we put in place, like water finding cracks in a dam. That afternoon, as I was showing Zoe how to laminate dough for croissants, folding butter into layers thin as paper, an idea struck me. My family's greatest weapon had always been their unity. They moved as one, protected each other, kept each other's secrets. But what if that unity wasn't as strong as it appeared? What if it was as fragile as the layers in my pastry? The kitchen was warm and humid from the ovens, the air thick with the smell of butter and yeast. Flour dusted every surface like fresh snow, and the rhythmic sound of our rolling pins created a soothing background noise. Zoe's purple hair was pulled back in a tight bun, a smudge of flour on her cheek as she concentrated on folding the dough exactly as I demonstrated. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, illuminating the thousands of flour particles floating in the air around us like tiny stars. "Zoe," I said carefully, watching her concentrate on folding the dough, "how are things with your dad and the others? After the arrests for the credit fraud, I mean." She shrugged, focusing on folding the butter into the dough with precise movements. "Tense. They fight a lot now. Uncle Derek blames Dad for getting caught. Aunt Patty says Grandma should have stopped them. Everyone's mad at everyone else." I nodded, processing this information like ingredients for a recipe. "Do they ever talk about me? About the bakery?" "All the time," she said, rolling her eyes as she reached for the rolling pin. "It's like they're obsessed. Uncle Derek keeps saying they need to finish what they started. Dad says they should just let it go, but then Aunt Patty calls him weak, and it starts all over again." A plan began forming in my mind, rising like dough in a warm kitchen. If they were already fracturing, maybe I could widen those cracks, turn hairline fractures into canyons. The next day, I sent individual texts to my dad, Aunt Patty, and Uncle Derek. To each, I wrote, "I know what you did to my bakery. The others told the police everything. They're trying to pin it all on you. If you want to tell your side, meet me at Parkside Cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. I showed Jamie the texts before sending them. "This is either brilliant or terrible," they said, biting their lip. "What if they all show up together?" "They won't," I said, with certainty born from a lifetime of watching their dynamics. "They don't trust each other enough to admit they got a text like this. They'll each think they're the only one." My finger hovered over the send button for several seconds, my heart pounding in my chest. The bakery was quiet, closed for the afternoon for cleaning. The only sounds were the hum of the refrigerators and Jamie's nervous tapping on the countertop. I took a deep breath, remembering all the midnight baking sessions, all the insults, all the blame, all the credit card debt, all the fake reviews, the broken window. I pressed send. I was right. My dad arrived at 1:45, looking nervous, checking his watch every 30 seconds. I watched from my car across the street as he ordered coffee, checked his phone repeatedly, knee bouncing under the table. At 2:10, Aunt Patty walked in, designer purse swinging from her arm. She saw my dad and froze, her expression shifting from confusion to suspicion in an instant. The look they exchanged was priceless. Confusion, suspicion, betrayal, all flashing across their faces like a slideshow. They didn't see me. I just watched as they had what appeared to be a heated conversation, gesturing angrily, pointing fingers, their voices rising enough that other cafe patrons began to stare. When Uncle Derek showed up at 2:30, the scene escalated from drama to spectacle. Even through the cafe windows, I could see them turning on each other, years of resentment and secrets bubbling to the surface like caramel about to burn. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching the chaos unfold through the cafe's large front windows. The afternoon sun reflected off the glass, occasionally obscuring my view, but I could still make out their animated gestures, the way they leaned across the table to jab fingers at each other, the way other customers edged away from their table. A barista approached them at one point, probably asking them to keep it down, only to be waved away dismissively by Aunt Patty. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but also a hollow sadness that this was my family, that this was what we'd become. The next day, Officer Martinez called. "You won't believe this," he said, sounding both amused and impressed. "Your uncle came in this morning, wanting to confess to the vandalism. Says your aunt and dad were planning worse, and he wanted to come clean before they dragged him into it. Started talking about the fake reviews, the health inspections, everything, like a dam breaking." I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness, sweet and bitter mingling on my tongue. "Did he mention the fake reviews? The health inspections?" "All of it," Martinez confirmed. "He's throwing them under the bus to save himself. Classic family dynamics. We've got enough now to build a real case. With my uncle's confession as a foundation, we had enough to file restraining orders against all of them. The legal process was tedious, a slow simmer rather than a flash fry, but eventually, we got court orders preventing them from coming within 500 feet of the bakery or contacting us in any way. The courtroom was cold and formal, all polished wood and hushed voices. I sat stiffly in an uncomfortable chair, watching my family members avoid eye contact with each other and with me. My dad looked older than I remembered, the lines around his mouth deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped. Aunt Patty's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. Uncle Derek kept fidgeting with his tie, loosening and tightening it repeatedly. They each had separate lawyers who spoke in clipped professional tones that echoed slightly in the high-ceilinged room. For the first time since opening, I felt like I could breathe without waiting for the other shoe to drop. The fake reviews stopped, the health inspectors disappeared, the threatening texts ceased. Business began to recover, customers returning like birds after a storm. Our baking classes became so popular we had to create a waiting list. We hired 2 part-time employees to help with the the growing demand. Zoe continued working weekends, showing a natural talent for pastry that reminded me of myself at her age, finding peace in the precise measurements and predictable chemistry of baking. 6 months after the restraining orders, Jamie and I were closing up when they said, "We should expand." I looked up from wiping down the counter, cloth pausing mid-swipe. "What? Expand?" Jamie repeated, eyes bright with excitement in the dimmed evening lights. "The space next door is opening up. We could knock down the wall, add more seating, maybe even a small coffee bar." The idea was terrifying and exhilarating. Expanding meant risk, more investment, more potential for failure, but it also meant growth, opportunity, a chance to build something even more meaningful than what we'd already created. "Let's do it," I said, surprising myself with my confidence. The renovation plans were approved, loans secured, my credit had finally recovered enough from the identity theft, contractors hired. We planned to stay open during most of the construction, with only a 2-week closure for the major work. The night before construction was set to begin, I couldn't sleep again, not from anxiety this time, but from excitement, from possibilities fizzing in my veins like champagne. I got up, went to the kitchen, and started baking, not because I had to, but because I wanted to, because baking still centered me, still gave me that sense of control and creation that had saved me all those years ago in a house where I had no voice. Our apartment kitchen was small but efficient, with the quality tools we'd slowly accumulated over the years. The digital scale Jamie had given me for my birthday, the stand mixer we'd splurged on when the bakery had its first profitable month, the set of professional cake pans I'd treated myself to after we won a local best dessert competition. The familiar motions of measuring and mixing calmed my racing thoughts, and the apartment gradually filled with the comforting aroma of cinnamon and butter. As I mixed the dough for my mom's special cinnamon rolls, the ones I'd make for special occasions at midnight flour, I thought about how far I'd come. From the scared kid baking in secret to a business owner expanding his dream. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Can't sleep, too excited about tomorrow. Can I come in early to help?" I smiled, typing back, "Sure, bring your apron. We've got work to do." The next morning, as the construction crew arrived to begin transforming our little bakery into something bigger, I stood with Jamie and Zoe, watching with a mixture of pride and anticipation. The early morning air was crisp and cool, the sky just beginning to lighten with streaks of pink and gold. The construction workers arrived in pickup trucks, carrying toolboxes and coffee thermoses, their voices low and professional as they discussed the day's work. The street was quiet, except for their activity, most businesses still hours from opening. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from the thermos Jamie held, mingling with the scent of the cinnamon rolls I'd baked in the night, now boxed up for the workers. "Your mom would be so proud," Jamie said quietly, squeezing my shoulder. I nodded, thinking of her lessons, how to bake, and how to protect my spirit. I'd honored both, despite everything my family had thrown at me. But as we turned to head inside, I noticed a familiar car parked across the street. My grandmother Edith, who I hadn't seen since the day my belongings were thrown onto the lawn, sat in the passenger seat, watching us through the window. Our eyes met, and for a moment, I felt that old fear, that old instinct to shrink, to apologize, to make myself smaller. Then I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and turned away. Whatever she wanted, whatever new scheme my family was plotting, I was ready. Because this time, I wasn't alone, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even family, take away what I'd built with my own 2 hands, measured in cups of flour and ounces of determination.